Well, I'm Carmen. It's great to meet you. I wanted to try this out because, well, we are going through a pandemic and who knows, I just wanted to try something new and see if this works out. If it doesn't, then that's okay. I just wanted to be a bit more comfortable talking in front of a camera and so forth. So anyway, I wanted to firstly start this off with books. And so the author, or authors, that I'm talking about today, their name is Christina Lauren. So Christina Lauren is a duo, Christina and Lauren, and they're like a writing duo that comes together to write these books. The two books that I have here with me physically and the other one that I read virtually, these two are a part of I believe it's 10 book series, and I have the second one in the series and the 7th one in the series, and then I've read a different one by her called The Honeymooners, the Honeymooners. That one I'll talk about later on, but I wanted to talk about these two first. I brought this one first. I brought Beautiful Secret first, and I brought this when I was in Tasmania with my sister, and we so a little bit about myself. I used to live in Tasmania when I was a kid, and I moved up to Sydney when I was 12. And Shalon and I, my sister and I, we go back to Tasmania maybe the last time we went before this year, before the whole pandemic, was 3 years ago for a friend's wedding. We usually go back for events and stuff, so this year we did go back for a friend's wedding as well. And where we used to live, it's a small city, town, suburb, not really sure, but it's quite small. It's called Devonport, and nothing changes really in that place except the last time that we went 3 years ago, which was 2017 if I remember correctly. There's this bookshop that's in like the Four Ways. That's what the mall strip is called in Devonport. I always go into that bookshop because I just love it. I always come back with like 5 or 6 books after a trip. Anyway, so I found this one there. That's what I was getting at. I remember my like main genres that I gravitate towards are young adult, romance, sometimes mostly fiction. I hardly ever stray to non-fiction or like biographies, and like I mostly revolve myself around the fiction world because it's just a easier read. It's much quicker. Anyway, I had read The Honeymooners first. I didn't actually have the book on me because I read it virtually. Anyway, so the plotline for The Honeymooners is that it's an enemies to lovers trope, which I absolutely adore because it's kind of what you want in your own life. And so they know each other because the main lead, his name is Ethan and Olive. Olive's the girl, Ethan's the guy. And so Olive and Ethan's siblings, so Olive is a twin. Olive's identical twin is getting married to Ethan's brother, okay? So it starts off with them being at a carnival. That's their backstory. That's how they first meet. And Ethan seems very like proper, if that's the word we want to say. He seems very like up himself and like, again, misunderstandings. So that's how Olive perceives him, that he's up himself and that he's like very like just thinks all high and mighty of himself. And then so while they're at the carnival, there's a misunderstanding because I believe Olive gets some type of like carnival food, fast food of some sorts, and starts eating it in front of him. And then because there's a misunderstanding between the two, he gives her a look, but she perceives that look as like disgust. And so because that's how they meet, she just continuously perceives him as a guy that like isn't very nice, simply put. the main like plot of the story is that Olive's identical twin sister is very big on like coupons and saving money and stuff like that. So she ends up like getting this deal of some sort for her catering for the wedding, and it doesn't go exactly to plan because Olive, I believe Ethan has a shellfish allergy and Olive just doesn't like fish, I believe, or something along the lines. And so they're the only two that don't eat the catering food provided at the wedding. And because the whole like story of the wedding is that every guest gets sick and because of the shellfish, and they have food poisoning. And so because Olive's identical twin sister is huge on coupons, she had gotten their honeymoon on a coupon deal. And the thing was, so the only way that the honeymoon could happen without them having to lose all the money that they spent on the honeymoon was if Ethan and Olive went in place of their siblings. And because their last names were the same, it kind of just worked out, and they didn't really like have to show their ID and be like, oh, I'm this person and I'm that person, when really Olive already looked like her sister, and then Ethan just had to say that his name was Ethan instead of, had to say his brother's name instead of Ethan, you know? So they go to Hawaii for the honeymoon, them two, and because they're enemies, and there's a lot of misunderstandings between them, it doesn't go so well at the beginning. And because it's the honeymoon of their siblings, they have to pretend they're also married, otherwise, you know, they could be sued for fraud. And so they pretend that they're married and, you know, that they're in love and blah blah blah. And Olive is unemployed at the beginning of the book, and she has just gotten an interview right before we go to Hawaii, and she gets the phone call at the airport saying, you know, you've been accepted, blah blah blah, congratulations. And she's like, well, I can't come in straight away from work because I'm going to Hawaii. And so, you know, they go to Hawaii and she meets her boss there that she works now for, and the boss is like, well, how about you and your husband come out to dinner with, you know, my wife and I? And she goes, well, I have to because this is my new boss. Anyway, so her and Ethan go out for dinner, blah blah blah. They pretend that they're married. Sparks kind of fly because at this point they're like sort of fixing the misunderstandings but not at the same time. And then, you know, when they're finished from the dinner, they go back to their hotel room, and then they meet Ethan's ex-fiance who's there with her new fiance, and it's just a lot of plot lines happen. And then they, you know, do the devil's tango later on in the story, spoiler. And obviously, enemies to lovers trope, they do fall in love, except there's a huge misunderstanding. I won't tell you just in case you do want to read it. And then, you know, they try to fix those misunderstandings, then they're like, I can't live without you, and blah blah blah. Anyway, highly recommend. Out of 5 stars, I might give it a 3.5. Anyway, Beautiful Secret. I had read this one, when did I come back from Tassie? I want to say March. No, we're in March. I want to say February. At the beginning of February. Yep, at the beginning of February, right before school started. I had read this one and it was great. It was great. I didn't love this one as much as I love Beautiful Stranger, because Beautiful Stranger just did some things to me. This one was, so the main characters are Niall, Stella, and Ruby, I believe her name was. Yep, Ruby Miller. Okay, so they work in the same business company. I'm gonna say company. They work in the same company. They're both in urban planning, and obviously Niall has to be the executive CEO, otherwise it just doesn't work. And Ruby is, I think at the time, she's an engineer. So she isn't quite in the same realm as Niall, but she is in the same company. But they don't work hand in hand, so she only sees him every now and then. Anyway, the thing also that I love about Christina Lauren is that they go from both perspectives. So you get one chapter of the female and then you get another chapter of the male. So you switch between the perspectives, and they do it so well that you kind of feel like you understand from both perspectives of how this love story is going. And sometimes it gets a little frustrating because you're like, well, this scene happened, but I wanted it in this perspective. And like, it's understandable that it's really hard to always make sure that you like go to what the audience wants, but again, they do it quite beautifully. So like I said, Ruby's an engineer and Niall is the CEO executive of this urban planning company, and Ruby's in love with Niall. So the storyline is that Ruby's in love with Niall. Niall doesn't know she exists, and then Niall has to go to a trip to New York because I think, if I remember correctly, yes. So they're in London. The company is in London, and Ruby's moved from America to London to be in that company to like get some recommendations for the year, and then move back to, I believe she needs the recommendation for Harvard. It's like a internship program that she wants in Harvard, and she can't get it without the recommendation from this company. He has to go on to this business trip to New York for a month, okay? And just remember this, he's just newly divorced. And he's meant to go with the other CEO of the company, except something happens to him. I'm not really sure. He's an asshole, so it doesn't really matter what happens to him. And he cancels or bails and says that Ruby's coming with him instead. And so, because Niall doesn't really know who the fuck Ruby is, Ruby has to go with him, and Ruby's quite infatuated with him. And they have to survive a month in New York City, right? And usually, well, when like they go away, you know, there's gonna be some smutty sex scenes. Love it, by the way, love it. Anyway, they start I don't want to say a sexual affair because they're both single, but they do start a sexual relationship with one another, and it is quite empowering. I want to say that's the thing about Christina Lauren. She makes all of the characters seem so empowered in their like sexual choices and how they do the physical activity. The devil's tango, if I shall. They just have a lot of sexy scenes, if you must, and like it just makes me feel less lonely. It just makes me feel wholesome, you know what I mean? Like it's what I want, but am I ever going to achieve it? No. Anyway, there's a misunderstanding, of course, because what's a novel without a resolution and a conflict, you know? So there's a conflict, and I won't tell you what the conflict is, just in case you do read them. I won't tell what any of the conflicts are, because why would you read it if you already know what the conflict is? And so there's a conflict, and they kind of like break up for a little bit, but they're not really dating either, so it's kind of like a limbo kind of situation. Anyway, and they get back together. I can tell you that because I want you to have a little bit of hope. Anyway, so that's Beautiful Secret. And out of 5 stars, listen, I gave 3.5 for the Honeymooners. I'm going to change the Honeymooners to 3. I'm going to give that a 3 stars because I'm going to give this one 3.5. Yeah, I'm going to give this one a 3.5 because I loved how empowering she is as a character, Ruby. I also love how they both learn together. They're able to develop and grow with one another, whether that be through their sexual experiences or them as a like duo or just life choices in general, I'm gonna give it a 3.5. Okay, Beautiful Stranger. I just got this from Vinnie's. I got it for $2. And let me just tell you, this one did some things to me, because this was the second one in the Beautiful Bastard series, or Beautiful series, sorry. And I just fell in love. Like, I fall in love quite easily. Surprise, surprise, it's a shock. But just, I fell in love with Max. Max is so beautiful in this. Like, Max and Sarah, I really enjoyed Sarah's character because she's such an empowering woman and just kind of like demands what she wants. This, you just want to keep reading because you're like, this can't end. I will not allow it to end. Like, it just possibly cannot. Anyway, Beautiful Stranger. It revolves around Max Stella and Sarah Dillion. I'm not sure how to say her last name. Anyway, so the plot line is that Sarah's just moved from Chicago to New York City, and she's escaping an ex-fiance because he's just the cheating asshole. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, so she's just moved to New York City and she's gone out with her friends. She's at the club and she's having this real old fun old time, you know. She's just getting drunk and dancing with her mates and, you know, just having fun. And she goes to the bar and that's where she meets Max. And Max is, you know, tall and broad and brown haired and, you know, British and just stunning. Like, when I imagine Max, I just imagine him as some hunky little fella. Anyway, so she meets Max at the bar. She's quite reserved. Or she used to be reserved when she lived in Chicago with her ex-fiance, sorry. And something kind of just snaps in her when she meets Max at the bar. Because she kind of just goes, you know what, fuck it. I might never see this man again. And so, you know, they order their drinks and then she goes back to dance with her mates. And she kind of like embodies someone else or something else and just kind of lets her inner ego come out. And so she dances for him, if that makes sense. So she moves herself because she knows that he would be watching her. Okay, so she goes, he lifted his glass, took a sip and smiled. I felt my eyes rolling closed. I wanted to dance for him. Never in my life had I felt so sexy, so completely in control of what I wanted. I'd made it through my master's degree, found a well-paying job, and even redecorated my house on a budget, but I'd never felt like a grown woman the way I did right now, dancing like crazy with a beautiful stranger standing in the shadows watching me. This moment was exactly how I wanted to start fresh. What would it mean to be devoured? And then it talks about, because when they first meet, he's like, I would love to devour you. I know. And then she's like, what would it mean to be devoured, blah blah blah. Anyway, so they're at the club, blah blah blah. She's dancing for him and then she's like, oh friends, I need to go to the toilet. We all know what that means. And so she goes to the bathroom, she comes out of the bathroom, they have an interaction. I'm not going to tell you what that interaction is, because if you do ever read this, you need to read it well, and I do not want to spoil any of the smutty scenes. Anyway, so she kind of becomes this person where she's like, no names, I'm not going to tell you who I am, what I'm doing here, I don't want to know your name, I just want to do this, and we call it a day. And so she leaves the club and she goes, I'm not telling you my name. And then he's obviously thinking about her. She obviously didn't want those two aspects of her life interacting. She didn't want her work life to somehow collide with her personal life, so she wanted to separate them. Anyway, so he goes to her workplace and is like, hi, you know, nice to meet you, I'm Max. And a lot more sexual things happen. And then the whole storyline of this is that, again, this is why I reference it to 50 Shades, but like a better version of 50 Shades, because 50 Shades was rough, is that they have a sort of deal where they go every Friday night, you tell me a location, how to dress, I'll come, we do the thing, we call it a day, no strings attached. And so that's what happens for quite a while. The smutty scenes are everything. So they meet every Friday, and then it kind of like the lines kind of blur. Also a key point of this one is that they love to take photos of themselves while they're doing the Devil's Tango. And he loves the look and the feel of art and blah blah blah, so he takes photos of her and photos of them doing the act. And then it's quite consensual. That's what I also enjoy. It's quite consensual, so it's not like he's doing it without her permission, nor is she doing it without his. So they have the deal where they meet every Friday, the lines start to blur, and they're kind of like, you know, how about we meet whenever, as long as the other person is like, let's meet tonight, blah blah blah. And then again, conflict happens where like because Max is considered as a playboy in New York City, and he's in page 6 quite often with like a new flavor of the week. And conflict happens between them, and then conflict happens between her and her ex-fiance that also kind of drifts Max and her apart, but not really, because again, they are adults and they come together with the misunderstanding, and they're like, well listen, we're adults, we should just be able to talk it out. Anyway, so highly recommend this one. I give this one a 4.5 out of 5 because, like I said, it just did some things to me when I was reading it. I absolutely adored this one. This one kind of made me want to read all the rest of them, except I kind of enjoy just reading them as standalone novels and not reading them as a 10-book series. Okay, so that was me talking about Christina Lauren for so long. I'm so sorry if I'm actually, listen, I'm not sorry, but if you have made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me ramble for so long about books or a author's books. If you guys like this, let me know. If you want to see me do something else, let me know.